Hi, I'm Israel Anderson. Welcome to another Table Talk. Today is the day you've been waiting for. We continue with the temptation story. And the reason this has taken a couple of weeks is because of, let me zoom out here a little bit and so you can see. It's kind of massive. There's a lot going on. We are going to quickly go over the temptation story from Matthew and Luke, and then we'll dive into maybe the biggest problem that is here. But there's so many problems here that it's going to take us quite a long time to go through. There's a lot of context we need to learn about to understand all that is going on here in the temptation story. So let's read through the Luke one here. Then Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, returned from the Jordan River and was led by the Spirit in the wilderness, where for 40 days he was tempted by the devil. He ate nothing during those days, and when they were completed, he was famished. The devil said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command this stone to become bread." Jesus answered him, "It is written, man does not live by bread alone." Then the devil led him up to a high place and showed him in a single instant all the kingdoms of the world. And he said to him, "To you I will grant this whole realm and the glory that goes along with it. For it has been relinquished to me, given to me, and I can give it to anyone I wish. So then, if you will worship me, all this will be yours." Jesus answered, "Go away, Satan. It is written, you are to worship the Lord your God and serve only him." Then the devil brought him to Jerusalem, had him stand on the highest point of the temple, and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down from here, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you to protect you, and with their hands they will lift you up, so that you will not strike your foot against the stone." Jesus answered him, "It is said, you are not to put the Lord your God to the test." So when the devil had completed every temptation, he departed from him until a more opportune time. Now, if we just look at these first two verses up here, this is verse 1 and 2 that I've got highlighted. And if we just, let's see, if we go into this chart here and just compare some of these things that happened. These are the first two verses of the temptation story. So what happened here sets the context, right? So let's look at the context. Jesus went through the waters of baptism in the Jordan on his way to the desert to be tested. The Hebrews went through the waters of the Red Sea on their way to the desert to be tested. Jesus is led by his Father's Spirit into the wilderness. The Hebrews were led by Yahweh, their Father, into the wilderness. The time of testing for Jesus was 40 days. For the Hebrews was 40 years. The devil tested Jesus in the wilderness. Yahweh tested the Hebrews in the wilderness. Jesus deprived himself of food. Yahweh deprived the Hebrews of food. After 40 days, Jesus was still craving food. After 40 years, the Hebrews still craved food. So we've got these striking similarities to the Exodus. That's the context. We're talking about the Exodus. And then even here, let's look at this one before we move on to the bulk, the meat of what I want to show you today. The devil leads Jesus to a high place to show him the kingdoms of the world, okay? Then the devil led him to a high place and showed him in a flash all the kingdoms of the world. Wait a minute. This is what Yahweh did with Moses. Yahweh takes Moses to a high place to show him all the kingdoms. Let's look at that. This is Deuteronomy 34. Then Moses ascended from the Rift Valley plains of Moab to Mount Nebo to the summit. Yahweh showed him the whole land. Of course, that's also where he murdered him and buried him in an unmarked grave, which people don't want to admit. So Yahweh takes Moses to a high place to show him all the surrounding kingdoms, and then the devil does the same with Jesus. Okay, now there's a statement I typed out here. I just want to quickly read. We tried to do a discussion with a Christian rapper on X, on a space, the other day, and that was a complete disaster for them. Wouldn't let me talk, cut me off, wouldn't even let me introduce myself. In fact, had their followers mocking me for trying to introduce myself. Some people are not very serious about this, and they just want to be religious and say, I'm right, and you're a heretic, and there's no reason. There's no trying to come to understanding with these people. They're not actually interested in what you have to say. They just want to mock you and to ridicule you. So let's try to resist that spirit, this familiar spirit that we see all the time where people become like infants throwing tantrums. Probably the best way to describe their character when you talk to them, try to talk to them about these things. So don't let that be you. And let's just read this. Before we begin, be aware, I'm very familiar with all the other arguments that attempt to resolve this very interesting situation we're about to explore. But I want you to see the seriousness of what's here and ask yourself if any of those arguments do actually resolve what I'm about to show you. Can you put your existing beliefs aside and look at this with fresh eyes? Don't just do a Google search on these verses and copy paste someone's explanation into your own mind. So many people do this without even thinking. They'll just go, oh, let's see what BibleNet says. And they pull something up and they just go, well, here. It's like, you don't even know what you just gave me. You don't even understand the very thing you just copy pasted to me. You just found it on a website and thought, we try very hard not to waste time with people that aren't serious about this. But if you are serious, if you're a theologian, if you're a pastor, if you're a real Bible student, you've got at least some published work, then and you want to have a public discussion or even a debate about these things, then you can reach out and we'll do that. But, you will need to show that you've actually been involved in theological interests for a while and have some understanding, all right? Because I keep just accepting people's proposals and it doesn't go well. So let's think about what's going on here and let's seek understanding. Let me get rid of this whole section and let's get to the meat of what we want to talk about today. This video is going to be a bit longer. I've been talking as fast as I can, as you've noticed already. This video will be longer than 10 minutes. Now, we know everybody drops off around the 10, 11 minute mark. Resist doing that because this is really important, okay? This is probably going to be about 25 minutes. And it's really, really important. And when we look at Luke 11, verses 1 through 13, we see this dialogue that we've just discovered that says a lot about Yahweh in the Exodus, and this too. But this is going to require a little bit more context. There's so much to go through. This is one point of about 20 that I have so far that we're going to be talking about for quite some months. And then this will end up as one big study that might be several hours long. Okay? So, the devil makes an offer to Jesus. The devil offers Jesus the whole world. But there's a big problem with this that becomes more problematic as we keep unpacking the story. Let's look at the devil's offer. The devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their grandeur, and he said to him, I will give you all these things if you will throw yourself to the ground and worship me. Do you spot the big glaring problem straight away? This is Yahweh's world. Yahweh says over and over, he's the God of this world. He owns everything. He owns the earth and everything in it. Okay. And yeah, it does actually look like that. It's not flat. Don't send me messages about flat earth. Just so not it. Like, just freak. Okay, I don't actually have all of these, but you can just Google them. How can the devil make this offer when Yahweh owns the world and everything in it? This is a real problem, and the existing arguments are all weak. Let's look at them. I was going to put all of the arguments here that Christianity kind of has, but it's mainly just about the garden, happened in the Garden of Eden. There's some other ones out there. You can Google them and take a look at them and see, do they actually resolve this? No, of course not. All right, let's look at what Yahweh has to say. This is Exodus 19:5. All the world is mine, says Yahweh. Okay, that's pretty comprehensive. All the world is mine. Psalm 24:1. Yahweh owns the earth and all it contains, the world and all who live in it. Okay, Psalm 50 verse 12. If I, Yahweh, were hungry, I would not tell you, for the world is mine and all that is in it. Okay, so I got some dates here because dates are going to be important. 1450 BC is when that happened, Exodus 19. Thereabouts, of course, these are always approximate. And these two Psalms were written around 1000 BC. Okay, so we know at least at that time, 1000 BC, that all the kingdoms of the world belonged to Yahweh. Right. Then we have the prophetic books of Daniel and Malachi. Malachi was written around 400 BC and Daniel around 164 BC. Yet neither mentions anything about Yahweh's kingdoms being transferred to anyone else, let alone Satan the devil. This is really important. When did all this happen? So when did this transfer occur? It must have happened between 167 BC and 30 AD. This would be an astronomical event, yet it's absent from the Bible. There is no mention of such a significant occurrence. So, why does Jesus treat the devil's claim to own all the kingdoms of the world seriously? How is it possible that the transfer, of all earthly kingdoms from Yahweh to Satan isn't mentioned in the Bible? How? How's that possible? Make that make sense. It doesn't make any sense. A common Christian argument is that this transfer happened at the fall of man event in the Garden of Eden. However, Yahweh repeatedly asserts that everything belongs to him, even long after the Eden event, falsifying that argument. Okay, so that doesn't work. Given the devil now possesses Yahweh's property, we need to know how this happened. Why is this crucial story missing from the Bible? Not a single word addresses this. Did the devil overthrow Yahweh during the roughly 195 years between the writing of Daniel and the temptation of Jesus? We must account for how Satan the devil came to own all of Yahweh's kingdoms. How is it possible that Christianity has next to nothing to say about this? This is a really significant problem. You can't have a situation where Jesus is taking the devil seriously. The devil offers him all the kingdoms of the world. Jesus doesn't laugh in his face. How did the devil get Yahweh's kingdoms? Now let's look into something that will provide some essential context here. Alon is a Hebrew word used 28 times in the Old Testament, usually translated as most high or highest. Alon is a title, not a name, and can be applied to multiple people depending on context. Yahweh uses the title himself on occasion, but there's an example where it applies to Abba Father. When he is giving the people of Israel to Yahweh. Now, this is a passage, we find this in Deuteronomy 32, 8 and 9. This is a snippet out of what is called the Song of Moses, or the Poem of Moses. And it's a little disjointed. It's very hard to translate into English. We'll see here in just a second. But it says some things that really should be talked about, but never are. There's a lot of passages, as if you've been following me for a while, you've learned so many of these passages just in the Bible that you've never heard of before, that no Christian pastor will ever teach on. And why? Because it's going to reframe, it's going to recontextualize the entire Christian belief system. Let's read this. When Alon, the Most High, gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided up humankind, he set the boundaries of the peoples according to the number of the children of Israel, for Yahweh's inheritance is his people, Jacob is his special possession. It was here that Yahweh became the Elohim, the God, over the Hebrews. They were given to him by someone superior to him, his father. Jesus and Yahweh are both sons of the Most High, Abba Father. So Yahweh didn't have all of these people to begin with. Wait, if Abba Father gave them to Yahweh, then Yahweh isn't the Most High, but a son of the Most High. Even if he at other times claims the title for himself, Deuteronomy 32 clarifies that there is someone over and above Yahweh who gave him the Hebrews as his inheritance. Wait, if Abba Father gave them to Yahweh, then this also means Yahweh did not create humans. And that's what I've been saying about Yahweh's own creation account that begins Genesis 2:4 versus the real creation account in Genesis 1 through 2:3. Okay? Wait, if Abba Father gave the Hebrews to Yahweh, then who did they belong to before Yahweh got them? Jesus, the Father of the whole divine council, would have been, some kind of group ownership situation. But Jesus created all of us in communion with the divine council, which is led by the Father of both Yahweh and Jesus. Yahweh is the usurper who kidnapped mankind, and that's why Jesus paid a ransom to get us back. So, someone with a higher rank than Yahweh, his father, gave the Hebrews to Yahweh, making Yahweh their Elohim, their God. This also means that Yahweh's lordship over Israel was a new thing. I mean, the implications here are pretty staggering, right? This in and of itself tells us that Yahweh is not Alon, the absolute ruler of the Elohim. Yahweh is the second-born son of Abba, Father, who has multiple other sons, as we see in Psalm 82. Did we have a little snippet on Psalm 82 here? I think here. Yeah, okay. Let's just take a brief detour here. The Godhead is not a Trinity, but a divine council. So I say this quite often now. Christianity teaches a Trinity. The Bible does not. The Bible teaches a divine council. Christianity does not. And that's a big problem right off the bat. We're going to look at Psalm 82. Abba Father is the father of both Yahweh and Jesus. So let's look at these. This is from the English Standard Version. They translate Aladah, which means El, God, gathering, council, court. God has taken his place in the divine council. The ESV actually translates it properly as divine council. In the midst of the gods, he holds court. Now, a lot of people will say to me, well, what about Michael Heiser? Do you know about Michael? I mean, I've read The Unseen Realm so many times. I have it in audio on my phone. I've listened to that book a lot. A lot. I've listened to it at least 3 times. And Michael just couldn't say what he wanted to say. In fact, as soon as he started talking about the divine council, he copped a lot of flack for publishing The Unseen Realm. And some of my critics want to say, yeah, but Michael Heiser still believed in a Trinity. I bet you if he didn't get the pushback from talking about the divine council, he wouldn't have continued to talk about the Trinity as a real thing. He was taken very young in life. It's very unfortunate that we lost Michael. Great guy, good scholar, but he's not Jesus, and that's important because a lot of people are like, but Michael Heiser is like, there's no Trinity in the Bible. No, I know all the passages people are going to use to try to say, oh yes, here it is. Jesus never sat the disciples down and taught them anything about a Trinity. But he did quote this passage. Oh, yeah, he did. He quoted Psalm 82. He quoted this passage right here. I said you are gods. This part here. Jesus quoted this in the New Testament. He didn't quote any of the ones that people use to try to fabricate the Trinity. But he did quote the one that talks about the divine council that Christians completely ignore. The exception of people like Michael, but they're few and far between. And as I said, he got so much drama from even talking about the divine council. Nobody wants to look at Psalm 82. Now, you may remember the story if you've listened to I've listened to Michael over the years. He tells this story about how he was sitting in church. He was in seminary, and he was in a chapel service, and somebody nudged him, a friend of his beside him, nudged him and said, hey, have you seen this psalm? This psalm. And it blew his mind and changed his life. This is a very, very important psalm. So important that Jesus quoted from it. And I tell you, if Jesus quoted from it, we better take note of what it says. Here is a condensation of the ministry of Jesus. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Selah. Give justice to the weak and the fatherless. Maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. That's what Jesus did. Jesus was there. Yahweh was here at this council meeting. Okay? And here, I said you are gods. All right? Sons of the Most High, all of you. Now, again, there's all kinds of excuses made for this passage. Oh, they were just human people. And no, they're not, because nevertheless, like men you shall die and fall like any prince. Who were the princes? These were the men that the Elohim had established in certain regional locations to be ruling over that area. They were the prince. Okay? By the way, no, I won't go there. You're like, what was he going to say? Arise, O God, govern the earth, for you shall inherit all the nations. All right. This is what Jesus wants us to know about. How do we know that? Because he quoted it. Okay. Now, John 3:16 does not say only son as in a singular son, but only unique or special son. And most scholars agree to that. And if you just look and, do a search, you will most likely find evidence that what I just said there is accurate. Most scholars agree that it doesn't mean singular son. It means a special son, my one and only son. What did Jesus say about the God of this world? This is interesting too, right? He said, I will not speak with you much longer, for the ruler of this world is coming, right? Ruler, God, doesn't matter. These are complete synonyms. Ruler, God of this world. I'm going to the Father, and you will see me no longer, because the God of this world has been condemned. Now is the judgment of this world. Now the God of this world will be driven out. This is all from Jesus. But there's even more by others in the New Testament saying the same things. Okay, in fact, these are not even the most well-known passages that talk about the God of this world. They would come from Paul. So, how can Jesus not be talking about Yahweh? We can't find any transfer of ownership of the kingdoms of the world from Yahweh over to someone else, let alone the adversary of the kingdom and all of humankind. Huh? Well, that doesn't make any sense. And that's not Christian theology neither. Are you going to find a Christian out there that is arguing that Yahweh gave? That's what the devil said. Jesus takes him seriously, doesn't call him out for being a liar. The temptation, the testing of the devil wouldn't make any sense if it wasn't true. Did you think of that? Wouldn't make any sense. How can it be a temptation if it's a lie? You think Jesus doesn't know? You think the devil wouldn't know? Jesus would know that he was lying if he was making it up that he owned all the kingdoms of the world? So we have no clue as to how Yahweh's property then ended up in the hands of the devil. Now you might say the devil was simply lying as always. Well, let's consider this. Jesus treats the devil's claim to the world as authentic. The New Testament tells us that Satan is the God of this world. If the kingdoms of the world do not belong to the devil, there's no test here. There's no temptation. Sorry, I said some of this already. Therefore, it is necessarily true that the devil does own all the kingdoms of the world. We can't presume to know how Jesus would have reacted if it weren't true, but there's no doubt he would have said something about it. He would have rebuffed the devil, perhaps laughing in his face or denying the absurdity of the claim in some way. He did not. Instead, he accepted and responded as if the devil's claim was truthful. This creates a genuine paradox that must be resolved. This is not something we can just leave alone, as it has been for 2,000 years. The devil tempts Jesus by offering the kingdoms of the world, but Yahweh owns these kingdoms, and there's nothing in the text that suggests Yahweh ever gave them to the devil. How can this be resolved, except that the devil tempting Jesus is Yahweh himself? But wait, there's so much more. And over the next few months, we are going to plow through a lot of this. But let's just remember the context was set right here in verses 1 and 2. Jesus went through the waters of baptism in the Jordan on his way to the desert to be tested. The Hebrews went through the waters of the Red Sea on their way to the desert to be tested. Jesus is led by his Father's Spirit into the wilderness. The Hebrews were led by Yahweh, their Father, into the wilderness. 40 days, 40 years. The devil tested Jesus in the wilderness. Yahweh tested the Hebrews in the wilderness. Jesus deprived himself of food. Yahweh deprived the Hebrews of food. And after 40 days, Jesus was still craving food. And after 40 years, the Hebrews were still craving food. And we have gone through all this before another study, but those are all the passages that talk about that in the Old Testament. I tell you, the more I dig into this temptation story, the more I am persuaded that this is going to be the most pivotal point, or at least it is so far that I've found, that is going to demonstrate to us who the devil really is. There's only one reason the story exists in the Bible, and that's to tell us who the devil actually is. And as we continue, we see here, but as we continue, you'll see even more, and you'll realize too, can't be anybody else. Jesus never talks about Satan, the devil, overthrowing Yahweh's kingdoms. No one in the New Testament does. They talk about the God of this world. They talk about the God of this world being the enemy. All of the context here is paralleling to the Exodus story and Yahweh's treatment of the Hebrews. Yahweh says he owns everything. So we've got a lot more to explore, and we'll continue to do so. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you to all of the amazing Founders Club members. You people are scrolling across the bottom of the screen here, and I appreciate all of you so very much, and I hope you've enjoyed the slightly longer video today, but we will try to keep them short in the future, okay? You have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.